Okay, you're very welcome. I'm John D Liu. I study ecosystem function and dysfunction for about the last 20 years. I was a journalist, and then I started studying ecology, and I've made a number of films, including some which have been relatively successful. One is Hope in a Changing Climate. It won some awards and was seen by tens of millions of people, maybe hundreds of millions of people now that it's been rebroadcast in all over the world. So it's gone around the world. It's been seen in China and America and Africa and Europe and so on. But really we found that it's possible to rehabilitate large-scale damaged ecosystems after long research in the Lus Plateau, the cradle of Chinese civilization. So that's sort of me. Well, I made this film, Hope in a Changing Climate, and it was broadcast on the BBC World, I think a day or two before the Copenhagen COP15. And it's a fairly clear statement. While the COP didn't come out as a very interesting political outcome, the film actually emerged as quite a strong statement for sequestering carbon in soils and re-regulating the hydrological cycle through increased biomass and organic materials. So I think this was maybe one of the earliest times that this has been forcefully stated in a popular medium like that. So almost immediately, I think about a week or two after this, I got a call from Allan Savory, who said, "Hello, I'm Allan Savory." And I said, "Well, hello, Allan." And then he said, but I think he told me the other day that so that was 2009. And I think he said something like he was being tactful, but he said, "Nice film, but you need to rethink your position on grazing animals." So then I said, "Okay, I'm open to study. That's what I do. I'm a research fellow, and I might as well go learn more." So I met Tony Lovell and Bruce Ward and went to Australia and met many people who are using the method and found excellent results. So that was the first time I heard of Allan Savory, actually. Yeah, well, we've just come back from South Africa, and we're seeing that people who are disengaged, people who are hungry, people who are at risk from drought and flooding, they can take matters into their own hands and increase organic materials in the soil, increase biomass, increase fertility, grow their own food. And this can be done at various scales. So you can do this in this like urban gardening or urban farming scale, or you can do this in the holistic pasture management. We're seeing, I think Tony Lovell told me he has, or you know, they have hundreds of thousands, and in Patagonia, I think a million acres in management. And then you can also do large-scale ecosystem restoration. So the Chinese project that I was documenting was 35,000 square kilometers. So that's approximately the size of Belgium. So if everybody does their backyards and you do holistic pasture management in all grazing situations, and you do large-scale ecosystem restoration in reforesting or revegetating degraded landscapes all over the world, is going to have an enormous impact. So I think the communities benefit in so many ways. It's about food and nutrition. It's about mitigating these risks from flooding and drought, and it's building a spirit of community, a resilience, because we're not going to be able to depend on financial systems or mechanical systems or something. We have to, we breathe air, we drink water, we eat food. So we need resilient natural systems, and holistic management can certainly help to make those healthier and more resilient. I think it's important because we have questions like, what can an ordinary consumer do, you know? So it's important to engage with that. And the fact is, we're not consumers. We consume things, but that shouldn't define us. We're human beings. So as human beings, we have a set of values, and they should inform our consumption. So we should look very carefully at what we believe. And if we believe that things that we don't want pollution or carcinogenic chemicals or endocrine disruption or any of these horrible things, and we don't want the climate to change, then we need to understand that what we buy, what we choose, and also what we do. So we have many roles to play. It's not simply that we can decide just by buying things. I think one of the problems is that we've created a consumption economy. We need to have a more natural economy. We need to naturalize economics, not monetize nature, but naturalize the economy. Well, I think it's absolutely necessary to understand what's going on, but as soon as you see the data, there's so much data now. You can have streaming data from sensors which are permanently installed, and the data is just coming in huge amounts. But you have to make a judgment. What does the data suggest? What does it mean? And so really what I've seen in my research, it's about 20 years now, that we're really kind of looking at biotic or abiotic systems. So a biotic system is a living system, and an abiotic system is a dead system. And if we look at over geologic, evolutionary, human history, that kind of time frame, then we get a sense of how biotic systems have processed the planet. So we have an atmosphere, we have a hydrological cycle, we have soil fertility, we have weather and climate regulation, we have amazing biodiversity. Well, that's pretty good, you know. So then you look at human history and you see that, oh, it's a contraction. We're reducing biodiversity. This causes a reduction in biomass. This necessarily causes a reduction in the accumulation of organic matter. That changes gas exchange, so there's less photosynthesis and less carbon sequestration. It changes nutrient release because there's less microbiologic communities, less organic material. And it massively alters infiltration and retention of rainfall, which is the natural regulation of hydrology, weather, and climate. So to understand this is one thing, but to prove this through statistical analysis, through comparison between systems analysis, this is really what we have to do now. But for myself, you know, I've been to 80 countries in every continent, and I've looked at all the systems. So to me, it's not a question, but for people who don't understand this, who don't have those experiences, then this is a good tool for policymakers. It's a good tool for scientists. But we have to see that in some ways the science is the problem occasionally. You know, so like in the Nile Basin, I'm sure the scientists of the day who learned that you could irrigate were given the Nobel Prize of the time, but they didn't know that they were leaving tiny deposits of of salt every time the water evaporated, and that over decades and generations, they'd kill the soil and they'd kill the ability to grow things. So then they they desertified, and then this process continued in various, and it's been shown in all the cradles of civilization. So that's kind of how I started, was looking at these ancient civilizations and what made them fail. So we're now at a position where they were at one time, but we're doing this at that, when a civilization, Greece, was going to fail, then Rome could emerge or something, you know. But now we have totally populated the earth and there's nowhere to go. So we have to address this as a species on a planetary scale. This is different. What we're seeing is that time is compressed. And so if a civilization failed in the past, then another civilization, a center of power and affluence, could emerge somewhere else. But now the entire world is populated and we're affecting global systems. So we're affecting the ocean and the atmosphere and the climate. So what we see is that we have to act as a species on a planetary scale. This is not a local or a regional problem. This is a global problem. And we are the problem. So it's necessary to realize that the earth is fine, but human beings are disturbing the natural evolutionary trends on which we depend on for life. So the holistic management is a recognition of this, and it's addressing, especially in grasslands and especially with large mobs of ungulates, which is good, but I don't think it alone is what we need to do. We need to use the same management system in cities. We need to use this in forests and in ocean and in our lives. And probably if we take this into economic thinking, then we'll get a better system, because our economic system is massively flawed as well. So all of this requires a tremendous amount of research to put the figures to this. Well, I think that this is a time when certain assumptions from the past are just exposed as fallacious, and it's not possible to hold on to these assumptions. So it could be likened to a period like, say, here we're in England, and for a long time slavery was legal. So people, a lot of the capital in this country has come from slavery, and it was okay to go to Africa or some other country and take people and drag them somewhere else and force them into labor. Well, that's just wrong, isn't it? So you can't really do that now. And that appeared, when that ended, there was a discussion, a profound discussion in British society. And basic human rights were discussed. Now, it's quite late, certainly for the people who had been enslaved for many generations, but it's better than not to have that conversation. So here we are at another moment where we're seeing scientific evidence that predictable catastrophic outcomes will come from certain types of disequilibriums that we're causing. And we're not just imagining this. It's not that we're projecting it into the future. It's happening now. So we're seeing extreme and erratic weather events. We're seeing biodiversity loss at unprecedented scale and so on. So we must act. It's necessary to do this. And a profound conversation must be had. It's necessary to have a societal conversation. It's not possible for any individual to decide what humanity is going to do. Again, we see that we need to act as a species on a planetary scale. So in order to act as a species, we have to have a shared cultural narrative. And this moment in human history, what excites and interests me is that at this moment in human history, it's possible to communicate with every human being on the planet simultaneously and instantaneously. That's a technical possibility. It's possible for every individual on the planet to have access to the sum of human knowledge. Wow. You know, that's really good, and we need it because we're standing at a high-risk threshold where either we will have a mass enlightenment and understand that the source of life is understandable, it's emerging by self-organizing life forms into a massive organism, and we're part of that. And there's no way we're going to separate ourselves from those things and pretend that it's just business. It's not business, it's personal. And there are no externalities. Everything is central to this. Nothing can be lost. Every decision, every word, everything we do matters. So if we were to have this mass enlightenment at this time, then we could go forward to a beautiful future. And I think you see that humanity has overcome things in the past, like slavery. And so you can't stand up in anywhere, really, and say that slavery is okay. And in the future, you're not going to be able to say that abiotic mechanistic systems have anything to do with nutrition or food or animal husbandry or conservation. It's ridiculous. So, you know, those things are going to become known. They're because they're true. So that means that we're moving, that's progress. Now, if we do that fast enough to avoid catastrophic outcomes, then it's going to be a beautiful world where every river and every grassland and all the forests and the edge systems and the oceans will return in maybe 200, 300 years. It will be absolutely beautiful. So future generations will enjoy that, and they'll look back at this time and go, wow, it was a very important time in human history when they made this understanding. But if we fail to do this, then they'll look back at us and they'll say, well, what were you thinking? Because they'll be in some sort of dark ages, or they won't even know we existed, because they'll have, humanity will have gone extinct, or will be just trying to survive and keep together whatever they can of civilization. But, you know, I think that if you look at that, that is an imperative. We have an imperative to live, and as a species, not as an individual, but as humanity, we all share this. So that's still pretty hopeful, I'd say. It's a high risk, but great opportunity. Well, I think everything is important, so nothing can be separated out. And anything that is moving humanity and collective human consciousness toward an understanding of how natural ecosystems function, and that is the basis of life and of wealth and of really, I mean, it's beyond sustainability, it's survival. So once anything that's promoting that, anything that's saying that, so how effective as an organization can holistic management be, or the Savory Institute be? You know, that depends on how things go. But what's happening now is it has a leading position in championing this kind of information. So it's quite important.